The rich man himself is blind and forces his daughter-in-law to be blind too. Blackie is blindfolded every day. She had to cook and do housework. One day she was about to do the laundry when she smelled a burning smell in the kitchen. It turned out that her sister was listening to a song and making beauty kanji in the pressure cooker. When she found her sister, she dragged her out without saying a word. Since she married into this mansion, she's been giving her a hard time. Now her most hated sister-in-law has saved her life. Jack's family was shocked when they heard the news, but Sister Black didn't take any credit for it and went back to her own room. The blind man's husband didn't even thank her and bullied her. The two blind men went around the room like that. Blackie knew that her husband was proud of himself, so she deliberately said a few words to stimulate his nerves. She said, "I'm only falsely blind. While you're really blind, I can choose to see this colorful world anytime and anywhere, but you are not only blind in your eyes but also in your heart." Jack was completely enraged. The next day at the festival, his younger brother Jack Man attended the archery event as the only man in the family who could make it to the festival. Who knew that under the applause of all the people, the younger brother shot 3 times without hitting the target. Suddenly he remembered how his brother taught him how to shoot when he was a child. They were so close, but now they broke up over a woman. The whole venue was in chaos. Jack heard his brother's cries and the noise and rushed to save him. After Jack learned from the black girl what happened at the scene, the two brothers realized what was most precious and embraced each other tightly. Jack also regained confidence in himself because of this behavior. He decided to completely change his life. He was no longer going to be a grumpy, resentful young man. He wanted to use his brain to fight against his eyes. The next morning, Jack went to work dressed up and looking handsome. Everyone could see Jack's energetic appearance again. Even Kate was charmed by him. The staff of the company also welcomed the arrival of the young boss. The only one who's not happy is Mom, because her son Tom has been Jack's secretary and driver. Tom has been helping Jack with his work for the past 3 years since Jack lost his eyesight. Now that the main man is back, Tom, the fake brother, naturally has to give up his position and give up his power. Mom and the old man were fighting and hitting each other, but the old man wouldn't take it. He even told her to let off some steam and warned her that no matter how bad the relationship between my son and I was, even if I gave away my fortune, it wouldn't go to your son who was born to another man. A week later, Jack earned $2 million all by himself. According to the previous agreement, he was going to return the black sister to her mother's house, but the whole family couldn't find her. Jack's father and brother told Jack to forget about it and find him a better wife soon. At that moment, the sky suddenly changed and crows flew all over the villa. Only Auntie spoke up for Blackie. It's true that men can't empathize with women. They are the most heartless creatures in the world. Indian village sells its daughters for a living. In order to reassure buyers of their purchases, the village's law stipulates that all daughters sold are never allowed to return to the village. A black girl was bought by the lord of the city for $2 million to break the curse of her family, but he wanted to abandon her after he broke the curse. When the lord's son had his wedding night, the son of the lord of the town, on the night of the wedding, was so disgusted with her black face and body that he kicked her out of the house. She knew the rules of the village since she was a child, but she didn't know where to go and couldn't go back to her mother's house. There was no place in the world where she could sleep. Heimei knew that her mother's family would not tolerate her in order to continue to sell their daughters for money, so she sneaked into the village at night in the dark. She didn't realize that her mother was worried about her food. Maybe it's the mother-daughter bonding. Blackie's mom was so upset that she didn't even eat a bite of rice. My brother even teased my mom by saying that when Blackie was at home, my mom would eat 5 bowls of rice a meal. When she heard this, she couldn't stop her tears. Blackie's father was also sad. Since his last experience at Jack's dinner party, he realized that Blackie had been living as a maid in her in-laws' house and was worried about her. At night, Blackie sneaked into the bedroom when her parents were asleep. She wanted to sneak in one last look at her old parents and then go off on her own. Even if she had to beg for food, she wouldn't go back to her in-laws to live like a dog or a pig for another day. Who would have guessed that Blackie's mom hadn't slept at all because she had something on her mind? Both parents were thrilled when they saw Blackie's daughter. They knew in their hearts that she must have suffered a great deal in her in-laws' home. Otherwise she wouldn't have run back to her mother's house in the middle of the night. So the black parents didn't ask any questions but just hugged their daughter tightly to give her warmth and strength. The younger brother was also happy to see his sister, although they used to beat and scold each other when they were young. But since her sisters got married, her brother missed her very much. Mrs. Black cautiously asked her daughter what she would do in the future. When she saw her tears, she was in tears. When she sold her daughter to that family, her heart was in turmoil. Even on Blackie's wedding day, she was upset and prayed that nothing would happen to her. While the 4 of them were discussing what to do, a neighbor on the night watch overheard them. When she heard Blackie's voice, she immediately called the others in the village to knock on the door and blockade Blackie. When she heard it, she tried to escape through the back door, but her parents refused to let her go and asked her brother to hide her sister. Then she went to face the neighbors alone and was confronted by the neighbors, and her mother insisted that her daughter had not come home. She closed the door and went to bed, but the neighbors wouldn't give up and started knocking on the windows. Blackie, who has always been afraid of the dark, was terrified in the dark room. Luckily, the whole family's heart was together to light her up. Wife abuse, a moment of pleasure to chase wife crematorium. A blind rich man returns his $2 million daughter-in-law because she's too dark for him, even if he threw away $20 million. He didn't want to sleep with the black girl. This has ruined her, because in this village, selling daughters is the livelihood. The village law stipulates that all sold daughters are never allowed to return to the village. Blackie lived in darkness in her mother's house. Black mother and black father were afraid that the neighbors would find out about their daughter's return, so they locked the front door every day and didn't even dare to draw the curtains in broad daylight. On this day, Mr. Black went out with his brother to make a delivery as usual. Just as he left the house, he realized that he had forgotten one item. Blackie quickly got up to help her father deliver it. Luckily, Blackie's mom was cautious enough not to let her go. Coincidentally, Blackie's mom accidentally stepped down the stairs while carrying the goods. At the sound of her voice, Blackie ran to her father. At that moment, the villagers who had already surrounded Blackie's house caught Blackie red-handed. The villagers were about to tie her up without saying a word. Father and brother resisted to the death, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. In an emergency, Blackie's mom picked up a torch and lit it with soot and started to fight. All the men dared not come near for fear of being burned by this crazy woman. Blackie's daughter made it home safely with her. At that moment, my aunt called to ask if she had made it back to her mother's house. Blackie's mom took out all her bad feelings towards her in-laws on her aunt. Auntie knew it was her family's fault and didn't dare to argue. In her heart, she still liked Heime's honesty, ability, sunshine and kindness, but the other in-laws hated her. The more she thought about it, the more uneasy she felt. She found a chance to explain to Jack what she had done for him since she married into the family. Jack suddenly realized that he had gone too far with his daughter-in-law. After all, he still felt empty in his heart during the days when Blackie was away. Maybe he had fallen in love with her from time to time, so he decided to get his wife back. But Jack's father deliberately arranged for the driver to take the young master in the opposite direction. Blackie went out with her family at night to pay homage to the gods in the hope that they could protect their family. But the villagers were all night owls and had sent people to ambush the family. But they captured the black sister alive and burned her alive to sacrifice to the gods, so that the village would be lucky. Jack's driver suddenly said his car broke down halfway. After fixing it, he wanted to take the young master home again. Luckily, Jack was smart enough to realize all this. Under his questioning, the driver told the truth and took Jack to his mother-in-law's house. As soon as he entered the village, he heard his daughter-in-law asking for help. Jack said in front of everyone that he didn't withdraw from the marriage. Blackie was still his wife. She was just visiting her mother's home. The villagers made peace with this, but Blackie's father had a grudge against his son-in-law. Her father took out a sum of money and said, "We'll pay back the money you gave us, and you'll have nothing more to do with her." Jack was kicked out of the house. She was so scared. A philandering man asked a strange woman to scrub for him in broad daylight. The key is in his father-in-law's yard. Isn't this a typical self-inflicted pain in the ass? When his wife and brother-in-law came home and saw this scene, they were so angry that they were biting off their back teeth. She told the other women that she was ashamed to give her husband a bath in broad daylight. The blind rich young man smelled the smell of vinegar in his nose and was happy. Isn't this exactly the effect he wanted? Who asked his mother-in-law to divorce and kick him out? Jack had to resort to this. After the black girl chased the girls away, she personally helped her blind husband to rub his back. Looking at her husband's enjoyable face, she was furious, remembering all the frustration she had suffered since she married into her in-laws, and twisted Jack's body fat. She wanted to make up for being his maid for the past few months. In order to get his daughter-in-law's forgiveness, Jack has been trying to make Blackie happy by making love with the villagers. But Jack's father in the mansion didn't want his daughter-in-law to come back, so he sent the village chief to kidnap Blackie and sell her to a remote area to work as a laborer. It suddenly rained heavily in the village at night. Blackie was worried that her blind husband would catch a cold in the courtyard, so she softened her heart and wanted to bring Jack to her room to get out of the rain. But Blackie's parents weren't so nice. They wouldn't let the man who used to bully their daughter into their house. Blackie saw her husband about to pass out. She finally put on a blanket to help her husband into the bedroom. Unsurprisingly, Jack's fever persisted. She had to go to the city in the middle of the night to get a doctor, but before she rode her bicycle out of the village, she was intercepted by her husband's father's men. Black sister looked at the village chief for the black money defection. Angry teeth, she said, "Uncle, I was you grew up by you really for that little bit of money all the bad things done." Like a stubborn black bull, Blackie resisted and knocked a few of the men off their feet, but the men reacted quickly. In the end, she had no choice but to turn to Lord Shiva. Under the guidance of Shiva, she took sand and wrapped it in a stone and smashed the men's heads with all her might. At that moment, Jack was in a coma, dreaming of his daughter-in-law being shot. But in reality, the black girl was still knocked out by Jack's little mother's bastard son. Maybe Shiva's power is too strong. She forced Blackie to turn on the computer so that she could defeat all these villains without any difficulty. Eventually, she managed to get a doctor to treat her husband. When Jack's dad found out that his fighters failed in their mission, he called and ordered his parents to send his baby boy back to the mansion immediately. The black girl's mother was furious and said, "Who cares about your blind son? We've kicked him out 100 times, but he's the one who won't leave. I advise you to pick him up or face the consequences." The next day, Jack recovered and went to the hospital. The next day, Jack woke up at 5 o'clock to make breakfast and said that he was going to settle in the black sister's house as her parents' son-in-law. Maybe it's because the mother-in-law is getting more and more satisfied with her son-in-law. Blackie's mom didn't hate this blind son-in-law so much for a moment. After all, women are emotional. But her father was rational and resolute, saying he wouldn't let her have anything to do with Jack's family. The rich man was too handsome to be coveted by the flower girls. He was tied up with brute force and put on a cart to eat tofu. It turns out that just one day ago, Blackie's family was attacked by the villagers right after dinner. We learned from the village chief that Hei Mei had been repudiated by her in-laws and kicked out of their home, and they all agreed that Hei Nui was not worthy of living in their village. After all, this village has been selling daughters for 100 years. If all the daughters sold are rejected by their in-laws like Blackie, then all the villagers would have to live on the northwest wind. Jack's father sent a wave of thugs to stir up trouble. He said that Blackie had stolen a lot of antiques from the mansion and sold them for money while she was living in her in-laws' house. Naturally, she denied it. How could she admit to something she'd never done? Jack was convinced that it was all a conspiracy by his father. The purpose is to stop him from taking Blackie home. But he's already announced that he's willing to stay and be Blackie's son-in-law. Why didn't his father let him go? So the black sister's house was smashed to pieces. When the snake left, he said that whoever wanted the house and land would gather at the wasteland tomorrow. Whoever comes first will get the house. Blackie's father had no choice. In order to redeem his sister's life, he borrowed money from the boss and paid Jack's father. Now the whole family is at the mercy of others. Blackie can't bear to give up the house she has lived in for so long, so she plans to participate in tomorrow's competition. Jack was very supportive and said he would help Blackie to plow the land and win the competition tomorrow. But she really didn't want to have anything to do with this rich young man, so she tied up Jack's hands and feet at night while he was asleep. Jack slept until the sun was high in the sky and woke up only when he heard the girls teasing him. Jack begged the girls to untie him, but the women did not want to give up this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, so they asked to untie the rope and take a bite. Meanwhile, the black girl and her brother are sweating on the hard ground. Luckily, Blackie is very strong. The progress of the two siblings has surpassed that of their competitors. Seeing that things were going badly, the boss realized that he was playing with fire. He called Jack's dad. They've come a long way, but they can't end up with nothing. Jack's dad had the idea to put a poisonous scorpion in front of the black girl. When the younger brother saw the scorpion, he pushed his sister immediately. He was bitten and was poisoned on the spot. He can't help Blackie to win the race anymore. Luckily, Jack had already escaped. He ran forward to help the black sister to plow the land, but Boss Black said the rules of the game were that it had to be a family affair. Jack is no longer related to the black sister's family. At this time, the black sister's father came forward and accepted this son-in-law as his home. In the end, Blackie and Jack won the first prize with the best of both worlds. Their house was saved. Blackie forgave her husband and accepted Jack back into her heart. The two of them are about to start a new and wonderful life. A son-in-law spends Diwali at his daughter-in-law's house in tears, talking to his family on the phone. After 30 years of living, this is the first time he has spent Diwali outside his home. Seeing her husband in such distress, her daughter-in-law suggested that if you're not comfortable at my place, you can go back to yours now. Sensitive and paranoid Jack was furious. He said, "I've already complied with your wishes to spend the festival with you at your mother's home. What else do you want?" In fact, Jack is thinking about his family now. Just now, his brother asked him to bring his sister-in-law home for a reunion dinner. Since he stated in front of everyone that he would like to stay in the black sister's house as a son-in-law, that's why she forgave her husband and reunited with him. If he had gone back on his word and proposed to go back to his own house for Diwali, his black daughter-in-law would probably be in trouble again, so he was too embarrassed to say so openly. But he could only deliberately find fault with his daughter-in-law. He also said that in their house, there's always a bonfire party. But here there's nothing. As he talked, he lit his mother-in-law's dowry as firewood and dragged her to dance. How could she dance? She said she'd like to go back to her mother-in-law's house to celebrate the festival. Jack couldn't stop his face from shining. Meanwhile, Jack's youngest daughter-in-law, Kate, was getting ready to dress up when she was attacked by a crow. She ran down the hall as fast as she could, but the crows wouldn't stop chasing her. This scared the hell out of Jack's family. Jack's father thought that the black sister had broken the decades-old curse, so he was relieved to get rid of his daughter-in-law. But the black crow came again. Kate was packed and fell down. After the doctor's treatment, they found that her injuries were not serious, but her uterus had been hit too hard and she wouldn't be able to get pregnant for at least 5 years. This was a shock to Kate. She imagined her husband's reaction when he found out. He'd kick her out just like he kicked out the black girl. After all, her only value in this mansion is to make babies. Her husband bought her at a high price so that she could bear children as soon as possible. Kate begged the doctor not to tell anyone, but doctors have their own professional ethics. They can't hide their patients' conditions. Luckily, the female doctor is more empathetic. After Kate's constant begging, when her father-in-law asked if her daughter-in-law had any internal injuries, she chose to avoid telling the truth. Kate was relieved. What made her even more angry was that she didn't know that her hated black sister-in-law was coming back here soon. She's going to have another competitor on her way to having a baby. The tycoon tried to hurt his younger son to force his older son to come home. The whole family was shocked. Jack's dad's move is really cruel. Maybe he just wanted to scare his two disobedient sons, but he didn't expect to hurt his youngest son in the process. But he still pretended to be calm and felt that he was right. Kate looked at her unconscious husband and cried like she didn't know where she was going. Her brother hadn't even left a seed in her womb before he died. How can she live in the future? At this moment, Jack is having his second wedding ceremony with Blackie. She agreed to go back to her in-laws to start a new life with him. He was supposed to be the son-in-law of her family, but he changed his mind within 3 days. Jack knew he was in the wrong. Jack knew he had been wronged. So he organized a simple ceremony for his daughter-in-law just to shut her up. When Jack learned of his brother's injury, he no longer wanted to get married. Blackie's parents were very worried when they heard about it. Her brother is their son-in-law. If anything happens to him, their eldest daughter Kate will be a widow for the rest of her life. Second marriages are frowned upon here. Blackie told her husband not to worry. Let's go home and see what's going on. Maybe she's out of danger. But Jack, this incompetent man, took all his anger out on his black wife. He said that you said easily how to go back out here from my home 500 miles it is now so. Late in the bus station has long been no buses your family and poor even a car cannot drive it. Blackie quickly asked her brother to find a way out. But she didn't expect her brother to come up with anything but a small donkey. So a man who never rode a motorcycle drove a blind man who was a great driver. The two of them drove all night to Jack's mansion. When Jack's father saw his eldest son bringing his second daughter-in-law home, he refused to let them in. But Jack was very protective of his black wife. When the black girl stepped into the door, the brother's suspended electrocardiogram suddenly jumped. His body, which was already cold, actually resumed its heartbeat. The team of doctors and specialists were excited and said it was a medical miracle. Lord Shiva must be watching over your little boy. Jack's family was so happy to see his brother come back to life. Uncle and auntie thought it was Blackie's fault because it was only when her feet entered the door that his brother got well. But Jack's father still refused to admit it. When his brother woke up, the first thing he wanted to see was not his wife, but Mrs. Black. When he saw that his sister-in-law and big brother had made up and returned to the family, he was very happy and felt that his injuries had not been in vain after all. Kate on the other side of the table was not so comfortable in her heart. Blind man wants to kiss his black wife on her wedding day but she refuses. He was so desperate that he went to the gym to relieve himself. The black wife realizes something's wrong and rushes to comfort him. Jack continues to sulk at night. The black girl throws herself at him. In order to get back at his wife, Jack tried his best to tease her. Just when she was being teased by her husband with 8-pack abs, Jack actually went to sleep with his head covered up. This made his wife depressed for the whole night. Early the next morning Jack sent his daughter-in-law a pile of beautiful clothes and jewelry. Auntie was so happy to see the two of them getting along so well that she even gave her the key to the family safe. The Black sisters have been completely transformed into slaves. Finally, she can sit at Jack's table and eat with her family on an equal footing. Imagine that before. She used to stand at the side like a maid to serve this and that. Kate saw that her sister, who she'd trampled underfoot since she was a child, now she's not only equal to her, she's even more superior to her. After the meal, Eunuch said that Jack's family will hold an annual banquet tomorrow and invite all the poor people in the city to eat a full banquet. When he leaves, he'll give each of them a gold coin as a blessing for the future generations of Jack's family. Jack's mom gave the gold coins for tomorrow to Blackie, the housekeeper. Kate stole the housekeeper's key when she wasn't looking. Then she ran all the way to the storehouse and stole the gold coins. The silly Kate didn't know where to hide her dirty things. She loves to watch TV, so let's put it behind the TV. The next day, after the banquet, Blackie and her aunt went to get the gold coins, only to find that the safe was empty. She quickly reported to her father-in-law. Jack's father pretended to be calm and said the guests could leave now that the event was over. But the poor people are always poor and have a right to be poor. They justifiably demanded gold coins and refused to leave. My brother immediately thought that his daughter-in-law must have caused the trouble and ran to their wedding room to look for the gold coins. But he turned the room upside down and couldn't find any. Kate saw that her husband was about to turn to the TV and pretended to find it. When her brother saw that it wasn't there, he was furious and left. Kate was finally relieved. This bag of gold coins is her father-in-law's customized Jack's gold coins. Even if it took her a moment to find out, she had to find a way to get rid of this hot potato. So she sneaked into Blackie's room to frame her brother and sister-in-law for the crime. But then the blind brother entered the room. She was so scared that she didn't dare to breathe. Jack touched the bag of gold coins in the drawer and was furious. Kate was so happy that she thought Jack was going to teach his wife a lesson. But unexpectedly, the blind man heard everything and caught Kate directly. Meanwhile, the black girl was handing out his gold bracelets to the poor one by one. Everyone was so grateful to her. She has also saved her in-laws' reputation for being untrustworthy. In the evening, Jack caught his sister-in-law in the act and confronted the whole family. The whole in-laws were furious, accusing Kate of being such a spoilsport that she'd almost ruined the whole family. She cried out her grievances about how the same daughter-in-law was treated differently, but no one is willing to stand on his side to help him. Only Blackie understood and comforted him. At this moment, she realized the importance of her mother's family. Then she secretly called her mother's mom to ease her relationship with her family's backer. Unexpectedly, what he did before was really hurt her parents too much. No one was willing to understand her. The younger brother thinks it's a disgrace to have such a daughter-in-law. She even secretly told her elder brother that he wanted to repudiate her. Kate heard about it and it scared the hell out of her. His father-in-law's eyes were wide with anger as he watched his daughter-in-law making out with his son. Jack's father wanted to do the same, but his daughter-in-law died a long time ago, so he gave a fatal order that no one in the mansion would be allowed to have an affair in public. But we all have a rebellious mind. The more the upper side suppresses something, the more the lower side will come out. The youngest son, seeing his elder brother having a good time, followed suit and spent time with his daughter-in-law. Jack's father wanted to find a new mom for his two sons. It didn't take long for his bad intentions to pop up. One mountain can't accommodate two tigers. He purposely used his youngest daughter-in-law to punish his eldest daughter-in-law. Kate, who has a big chest and no brain, took a big bottle of 502 and smeared it all over the soles of her sister-in-law's shoes. Blackie fell down the stairs before she could take 2 steps. Luckily Uncle Jack was quick to catch her head. Otherwise, her face would have been even worse. When Jack heard his daughter-in-law fell, he was heartbroken and dragged her back to her room to help her apply medicine. In the evening, Kate secretly brought Blackie to a goddess. The old man himself is blind. He swore to her that he could cure her husband's eyesight. She was so excited to hear that her husband would be able to see again. She was so excited that she bowed her head to the godmother. Unexpectedly, Jack caught her in the act. He thought she hated him for being blind. That's why she's been sneaking around and doing all this shit. Kate gave him a look. The godmother sprinkled a handful of flour. Then she whipped Jack, and he kept saying see the light again. Jack North was tired of this kind of action. He grabbed the old lady's whip. He whipped himself madly and his family was shocked when they heard the news. Black's sister had no choice but to use her small body to help her husband block the whip. Jack realized something was wrong and stopped. Black's sister hugged Jack, who was covered with wounds, and apologized desperately. She said, from now on I am your eyes, I will never go to these messy things again. The family members also cried red eyes when they saw the two people who were so close to each other. After returning to the room, Blackie wanted to help her husband with the medicine, but Jack, who has a big hand, smashed all the photos of the two of them to pieces. She kneeled on the floor without dignity and begged her husband for forgiveness. She said, hubby, I will listen to you from now on. I will listen to you. The daughter-in-law of a wealthy family was expelled from her home for having a red herring but returned to the mansion with her big belly. Since her marriage, she has been riding on her brother's daughter-in-law's neck. This time, she's finally standing up for herself. When she found out that the one who drugged her husband's drink was her own sibling and sister, this time she won't be a White Lotus again. Blackie chose to expose her in front of her in-laws. As expected, Kate's face was innocent and she didn't admit it. When Blackie showed all the evidence, Kate still pretended to be a fool. But this time, all the in-laws were unanimous in believing Blackie's side. Only Kate's husband is not sure whether he should believe his daughter-in-law or his sister-in-law. When the younger brother closed his eyes and slowly connected all the behaviors of his daughter-in-law after the wedding, in the end, reason overcame emotion. Kate really didn't want to leave this magnificent home, so she begged her father-in-law, who had always loved her the most. But her father-in-law was very clear about it. He said, I think you have a pretty face and can help our family's reputation, but that doesn't mean you can murder my own son. Even if you were the most beautiful in the world, you wouldn't be able to match the weight of my son in my heart. Kate saw that no one in the family could support her. She had to call her mother's family, but given her previous behavior towards her parents, her real parents were also cold to her. The answer she got was that she would never be allowed to enter her mother's house again. This really made Kate panic. She vowed that she would never be allowed to live on the streets. Meanwhile, her younger brother, who was deeply hurt by her love, he was locked up in his room, not eating or drinking. The whole family was worried. The good brother always listens to his sister-in-law. Only after Blackie's persuasion did he eat a few bites to make up for it. When Jack's family packed up his daughter-in-law and forced her out of the house, Kate fainted before she stepped out of the mansion. The in-laws all thought it was her usual trick and didn't want to talk to her. At this critical moment, the role of the mother's family comes into play. Blackie was the only one who was concerned about her sister's safety. She felt Kate's cold hands and feet and realized something was wrong. Then she told her in-laws to call an ambulance, but everyone ignored her. Finally, at the insistence of the black sister, we still sent Kate to the hospital. Before going to the hospital, her status was worse than that of a guard dog. When she came back, she became the most precious to the whole family because she was pregnant with another baby. Jack's father was happier to know he was going to be a grandfather than a father. But the other women in the family were not happy, because it's an ancestral rule that only the eldest son is the heir. If the baby in Kate's womb is a boy, then the property will be his. The black sister didn't have any problem with Kate because of this. She was still happy to congratulate her sister and take care of her. But Jack is a small-minded man. As the eldest son of Jack's family, he's eaten all the family's profits. He thought he could have a grandchild, but he didn't expect to be cut off by his younger brother, and he was so angry that his tears flowed profusely. When she saw this, she comforted her husband by saying that maybe the second son would have a daughter. She'll give him a big black baby as soon as possible. This made Jack happy. Sisters become sisters-in-law in a second. Is it true that sisters-in-law are destined to be natural enemies? Kate secretly drugged Blackie and planned to sell her, but when she bumped into her husband and brother-in-law looking for her, she was so scared that she rushed to hide. Trapped in the trunk of the car, Blackie tried her best to make noise, but it didn't help. Although she was close to her husband, they still missed each other. Blind Jack couldn't find his daughter-in-law and was so angry that he had tears in his eyes. Perhaps at this time, Blackie sensed that her husband was in danger, so she broke the rope and escaped. When Jack heard his daughter-in-law's voice, he was so excited that he hugged and kissed her. Kate and Auntie's hearts were about to burst out of their chests. If Blackie identifies them in front of the whole family, they'll be in deep shit because of young Master's temper. When Jack asked his daughter-in-law who made her look like this, but the simple black sister insisted that her sister-in-law's drag queen from her ex-husband's house kidnapped her. Kate was relieved to hear that, but her sister-in-law panicked. She tried to defend her son. Jack already hated his mom. He's been looking for a way to hurt her and her son. This time, he threatened to cut off that person's hand. The stupid son somehow took such a big blame, naturally denied it. The two sides argued and the man hurt himself. The whole family was shocked. The man was so scared that he ran away. After Blackie was sent to the hospital. Luckily, she didn't hurt any important parts of her body. After a month in the hospital, she was happy to be discharged, but her father-in-law stopped her when she entered the hospital. Jack was furious. His wife risked her life to save his dad. This old man does not know how to be kind. At that moment, his father snapped his fingers. The villa was ablaze with lights. It turns out that the old man is also very romantic, secretly arranged a big surprise for the rescuer. The black girl has also conquered the most difficult person in the family by saving the slave's life. Kate was furious when she saw her whole family falling under the black girl's pomegranate skirt. She went to her father-in-law, who had always loved her the most, to try to regain her position as the mistress. But Jack's dad was already sick of Kate and didn't want to listen to him. He just slammed his glass. Kate, too, was a good sport and immediately made a face. At night, she slept on how to consolidate her position in her in-laws' house. She was woken up by loud music. Her nerdy husband was actually teaching her baby while she slept. This made Kate, who was already in a bad mood, feel even worse. She took it all out on her husband. The blind rich man fell in love with his sister-in-law right after he regained his sight. He thought the daughter-in-law he bought for $2 million was really ugly. He couldn't even imagine how he'd kissed this black girl all these years. Just thinking about those images makes him sick to his stomach. Along with the black girl, there is her own sister, Kate. Kate is also a winner in life, with white skin and a loving husband, and now she has a baby of her own. Soon she will be the king of the family with her own baby. On the other hand, Blackie has been married for so many years. She has been helping her husband to find a way to restore his eyesight. She was so stupid that she even wanted to jump from a 20-story building just so she could donate her eyes to her husband. But she never imagined that now that her husband's eyes have finally been cured. But he thinks she's ugly. The whole family could tell. Jack disliked his wife from the bottom of his heart. Only the simple black girl is alone there, excitedly happy for her husband's sight restoration. Jack's expression of hopelessness. Jack's father saw it with his eyes and loved it with his heart. Only men know men better than each other, right? Kate, who is the best at understanding men? Kate has been flirting with Jack when the black girl is not around. Faced with this kind of action of his daughter-in-law, his brother couldn't stand it anymore and dragged him away. While they were arguing, the younger brother waved a big slap, but Jack stopped him. He also has a big brother to the younger brother, a meal to teach men should learn to respect women. So beautiful daughter-in-law, how can you not want to hit it? Kate hears the ass upside down to hide behind the big brother to cry and complain. The younger brother was angry, eyes red, but there is no way. After all, his eyes were blind before, but it's not easy to get well. Now he's blind in his heart. Jack returned home and couldn't wait to find his favorite horse. Then he went for a ride alone. At this moment, the black girl wanted to sit on her husband's motorcycle like before. Unfortunately, Jack doesn't want to drive this black girl anymore. The black girl chased her husband like the wind, but she couldn't catch him. She hijacked a motorcycle to chase her husband's motorcycle. Due to the sandy road, Jack's eyes started to get sick, but he still insisted on driving to the bar. Since he lost his eyesight, he hasn't had the courage to come to the bar. Today, he's going to be the prince of love again. Jack is slowly finding his old self in the glamorous bar. The black girl has finally caught up with him. Unfortunately, the bar's security guards won't let this country bumpkin in. He said only Black Diamond members are allowed to enter the bar. The black girl was confused. What should we do? A woman aborted her full-term baby so she could marry her husband's own brother and become the rightful owner of the mansion. Not only that, she even called the police to tell them that her husband had abused her and caused a miscarriage. The brother is confused. How could he have killed his own child when he accidentally pushed his daughter-in-law during their argument at the hospital yesterday? He was the one who was most looking forward to the baby's arrival in this family. Although the brother roared and asked his wife why, but it seems that he has jumped into the Yellow River, cannot be washed away. The second youngest member of the group will be on the front page tomorrow morning for domestic violence against his wife, and their stock will surely plummet as a result. Kate has also calculated that her husband, who has always valued the family's interests more than his life, her father, who has always valued the family's interest more than his life, will stop this from happening. He said, How can you drop the charges against my son? And that's when Kate finally got it. She cried and cried that her marriage to her brother was a shell of its former self and that she was getting a divorce and not leaving home. Because in India, a divorced woman is a disgrace. She would move out when she found a new place to live. The brother agreed without hesitation. He realized that he and his wife were not on the same page, but he had to put up with her because he had a baby. Now that he's no longer a father, he has nothing to worry about. The two of them parted in front of the whole family. The next day, Kate woke up early in the morning and dressed up to flirt with her husband. My brother couldn't stand his ex-wife's glamorous look. He said, "I don't know how you can live in my house anymore. Kate, I've given you my whole life and I've given you a child. How can I be ashamed?" The younger brother was speechless, and then Kate slammed into Jack's arms. The black girl happened to witness all this but silently avoided it, because in her heart, she also felt that she was not good enough for Jack. Kate has been poking Jack's heart, saying that only a beautiful woman like herself can match his son. She has been poking Jack's heart out in a variety of ways, and has made him feel very excited about her. While the two of them were chatting passionately, Auntie found out about their affair, because Jack and his brother's real mom passed away a long time ago. Auntie has always been the head of the family, so both of them were afraid of their aunt. Kate was so scared that she ran away without saying a word. Jack was also embarrassed, but Auntie, who had seen a lot of things, saw right through them. Aunt constantly knocking his nephew. You cannot do something unconscionable in the days when you cannot see the eyes of the black sister is dedicated to you to take care of you and help you see the light. You cannot be sorry for her. What's more, the person you fell in love with is also the black sister's own sister and brother's ex-wife. You don't want to break the hearts of two relatives at once. Jack has been thinking about his aunt's words over and over again. Does he really want to live with that little black girl for the rest of his life? The ugly wife watched her husband make out with her older sister, but she couldn't do anything about it, since the two sisters were brought into the mansion together. Black sister, who grew up under the bullying of her own sister, has become the most honored grandma of the whole family. Although she is the second youngest sister, she has to greet her morning, noon and night, because she married a husband who has no inheritance rights. Kate doesn't want to be a green leaf all her life, so she starts to seduce her elder brother who has hundreds of billions of dollars of inheritance. She used a trick to lure Jack to the grove. She also sent someone to take photos of them in the wrong place. When these photos were specially presented to Blackie's eyes, she had no idea what to expect. Although she had expected this day to come, but she didn't expect it to come so early. She also didn't expect that the woman who stole her husband would be her own sister, with whom she grew up. Betrayed by both love and affection, he was like a man possessed. Little by little, he recalled all the things he and her husband had done. He thought about it all night and finally realized a slap in the face can be loud and clear. Kate must have seduced her husband on her own initiative, so he approached his brother-in-law to tell him. Unexpectedly, his brother was hiding in his room, sulking. He cried and cut up his wedding photo with Kate. It turned out that the younger brother had also received photos of his wife with his elder brother. He cried and said he couldn't bear to see anything in his eyes. He said he had no choice but to get a divorce. But the black sister, who was in love with him, advised him to think twice before doing so. She also said that there is no absolute loyalty in marriage and that you have to learn to look the other way. Growing up, the second young master was not so aware of this. He'd rather give it away than wear it again. On the other hand, Blackie's concept of love is very forgiving. She can always find all sorts of reasonable reasons to persuade herself to give in. After Jack had spent the night with his beloved, the next day, the two of them returned to the mansion in a cuddle. The family was shocked to see the scene. Auntie was naturally devoted to her own family. She came up and scolded Kate. She said it must have been the vicious village girl who seduced his nephew. That's why Jack made such a mistake. But his brother doesn't care who's right or who's wrong. In his mind, this kind of thing is a man's fault. He said, "I've always treated you as my most respected brother and you're after my daughter-in-law." Jack is used to being the eldest son of the family. He can't stand his brother disrespecting him like this. He said, "Why don't you give me an ugly wife while I'm blind?" The younger brother couldn't say a word because of his brother's PU. At that moment, Blackie came down from upstairs. When she heard her husband talking behind her back, she didn't get angry at all and advised the two brothers not to fight. She said that she believes that her husband and Kate are innocent. When Jack saw that his daughter-in-law was so understanding, he immediately went along with it. After all, he still wants to take over the whole group of cheating. This matter is too big, will certainly have a certain impact on him. It's best if we can minimize the situation. The rich young man abstained from sex for 3 years because his wife was dark and ugly. Back then, he was blind. His father spent a lot of money to buy him a village girl from the countryside as a daughter-in-law. Because of the black wife's beautiful body, the rich young man loved it all day long. Unexpectedly, under the black sister's careful care, Jack, who had been blind for 1,350 days, actually regained his sight. The whole family celebrated and agreed that Blackie was a blessing to their family. Only Jack was silently swallowing bitterly. Looking at the black girl in front of him makes him sick. Today is Blackie's birthday and the whole family has decorated the house to celebrate her birthday. Auntie repeatedly asked Jack to buy a precious gift for her, but Jack couldn't think of anything to give his daughter-in-law after a day of shopping. Even if he puts a layer of gold on her, she'll still be the same. He thoughtfully gave each member of his family something they loved. Only his own daughter-in-law received a buy one get one free gift from the mall. But even such a worthless trinket touched Blackie's heart, because this is the first time since she was born that she has received a gift of her own. This shows that the girl who was not loved in her family. After arriving at her in-laws' home, she only knew how to work like a cow and please others, never knowing how to love herself. My father-in-law and son said they'd work hard so that he could have a grandchild as soon as possible. But Jack didn't feel a thing when he saw his black wife. He had no choice but to rely on alcohol to paralyze himself. When he was unconscious, the baby might come naturally, but he didn't get the right amount and snored on the bed. The silly black sister did not notice anything strange and even thoughtfully washed her husband's feet to make him sleep more comfortably, totally unaware of her husband's boredom with him after he regained his sight. Kate, who had long coveted the status of the youngest grandma, deliberately ran to Blackie to tell him all this. How could the naive black sister believe it? But looking at Kate's determined eyes, although she pretended to be calm on the surface, but in her heart, she was already in a panic. She kept recalling it over and over again. After a long mental struggle, she came to the conclusion that her husband disliked her looks. She stayed up late at night and went to the puddle to complain to God for giving her such a face. Blackie cried all night. The next morning, she was as good as new. She even drew herself as a clown. Then she continued to take care of her husband as if nothing had happened. She thought that her black face would not affect her husband's good mood anymore. The black wife watched her husband make out with another woman and didn't dare to let out a single fart. The crowd is curious about this sudden black girl and they all ask Jack who she is. Men are all face-saving creatures. He couldn't say that the black girl is his daughter-in-law. The black girl couldn't bear to see her beloved man in trouble, so she graciously ran onto the stage to introduce herself. Her stuttering English made the crowd laugh. Blackie described why she married into a rich family and a series of stories between her and her husband with great affection. She made not only herself but also everyone in the audience cry. Jack then realized how stupid he had been all this time. He almost lost his daughter-in-law who loves him so much and is so good. He had the courage to embrace his daughter-in-law and introduce his legal wife to his brothers. And he was angry with his drinking buddies for disliking his wife and then dragged her out of the dance without turning his head. At night, when he came home, in order to rediscover his love with his black sister, he put a black blindfold over his eyes and tried to remain blind. His brother helped him to think of this good idea. As long as he can't see anyone, the feeling will come up immediately. After all, as long as the lights are off, even the most beautiful women are the same. The two of them soon found the same feeling as when they were newlyweds. Blackie was so happy that she asked her aunt to learn how to cook Western food for her husband. She planned to have a romantic candlelight dinner with her husband tonight. But before she finished cooking, Jack received a mysterious phone call. It turns out that his ex-daughter-in-law called him and said she was being stalked by a bad guy and asked him to go and save her. Jack looked at the tears of beauty without saying a word. Riding a motorcycle rushed to the. When the black girl heard the car downstairs, her husband had long since disappeared. Jack arrived at Kate's address and found no one there. Only a beauty sleeping in the middle of the lake. He took off his clothes and plunged into the water. The fierce man saved Kate on the shore and then kindly helped her to warm up. And it just so happens that Kate set it all up. The image of the two naked men hugging each other was captured on camera. Will be on the front page tomorrow. At this moment, the dumb black girl is waiting for her husband to come home. The ugly wife of a wealthy family painted herself as a clown for fear of disgusting her husband. Just because her husband said that every time he saw her black face, his eyes burned. Since she married into this family, she feels obligated to be responsible for her husband's joys and sorrows. To make her husband comfortable and happy is the most important job in her life. For this reason, she wakes up 3 hours early every day to do her own styling. She's even planning to go to school to learn all kinds of styling. When her husband got tired of one, she would change to another one. Jack is still not moved and thinks that his wife loves to make a fool of herself and said a lot of unpleasant and heartbreaking words. The black girl held back her tears and took off her delicate makeup, revealing her dark face. At that moment, she realized that no matter how good she was at makeup, she was still a black girl to her husband. But she remained undaunted and asked her husband not to divorce her. As long as she could be by her husband's side at all times, she was satisfied. Jack wanted to kick out his ugly wife so that he could be with his beloved. But he still had a little bit of man's conscience and couldn't bear to leave the black girl like that. Under the black wife's nose, he went out with Kate, the black girl's sister. Kate is also not an easy target. She married into this mansion with the black sister and realized that her husband did not have any shares in the group, so she repeatedly wanted to divorce her brother. But her brother was a very affectionate man and refused to give up. But Kate didn't care about that. She was still bold enough to fool around with Jack. After all, this tall and handsome man in front of her is the sole heir of the whole family. In order to become the rightful grandma, she secretly paid some gossip media to expose his affair with Jack. As a prestigious family, the youngest son and the second youngest grandmother's affair has not yet come out for a while and it is already known to all. The whole family watched the live TV in a state of confusion. The family's eyes turned green with anger. The eyes of the younger brother and the darker sister were empty. Uncle reacted and quickly called to block the news to prevent the public opinion from fermenting faster and faster. Unexpectedly at this time the family group received the same text message. These two shameless people actually admitted it officially. They were so angry that everyone was itching. Not only that, they even brought the media to their mansion for an interview. The entire Gu family was immediately put in the spotlight and even their stock As the saying goes, a friend's wife is not to be bullied. But Mr. Fu accidentally made a big deal out of it. He married his brother's daughter-in-law. Jack, who has been used to calling the shots since he was a kid, didn't seem to realize the seriousness of the situation and even held a press conference to announce that he was getting married again, completely ignoring the face of his wife and brother-in-law beside him. When many reporters asked sharp questions one after another, the answer of the two people is also more and more biased and direct and does not take advantage of it. In just 5 minutes, the whole Story family lost their face. At this point, Blackie did not care about the slightest bit of aggression in the Gu family's daughter-in-law status to help her husband and his own sister to block the gun, but it seems to be a little bit useless. In the end, it was up to her father-in-law to make sure that their family would never allow any sex news to happen. For the sake of the old man's face, the reporters did not have the courage to pursue the matter further. Afterwards, the elders also warned Jack and Kate to keep quiet. But the more you don't get, the more you stir. Jack couldn't even eat when he thought of Kate's curvy body. After 3 days and 2 nights of hunger strike, Jack couldn't take it anymore and ordered takeout for himself. Blackie saw him. Blackie loves her husband's body more than herself. Jack was worried that he had no place to vent his anger. He coldly threw his wife's carefully prepared meal to the black crows. He even turned his head to humiliate the black girl. Looking at the strange but familiar man in front of her, Black Crow's heart was so cold. She didn't believe that her husband didn't love her. After all, the two of them had had so many beautiful and warm loving times. After dinner, her brother had no place to release his anger, so he made love to his wife in front of Jack. Kate didn't like it very much, but she was still his wife in name only. Jack cannot see the goddess in his heart suffer a little bit of aggression. Directly scolded his brother to immediately apply for a divorce to stop harassing